You're listening to Operation Self Reset with Kimanzi Constable. What is going on, you freaking awesome people? Welcome back to Operation Self Reset. My name is Jake Naraki, coming to you live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where each and every week we dive into a different topic in the world of personal development so you can become better. A self reset is nothing more than understanding that you have more power to give than what you're currently giving in your life, in your family, in your health, in your business, and overall wellness of life in general. Now, obviously, that's a big pill to swallow, but the simplest things to do are the easy things to do. And if you can simplify and do the easy things, then great things can happen in your own personal life. Today, we have an awesome guest. His name is Kimanzi Constable. He started off selling bread here in Milwaukee, and today, right now, he is actually overseas in Africa, working with companies on enhancing their reach, their storytelling, all different types of things. He has truly traveled the globe. He writes for Inc. magazine. He was in Success magazine. He writes for all different publications that you know and love and trust online, and he has written 4 books. Very impressive guy, great guy to connect with. Kimanzi, if you're listening to this, I thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Your story will truly inspire this audience in particular. Before we get into the content for today, I want to apologize for the audio quality. For some odd reason, my stuff is all messed up. I don't know how that happened, but I don't have time to fix it, so this is what you're getting for right now. I will try to do better for next week, Wednesday. And also, too, if you're looking to keep yourself inspired for the rest of 2017, feel free to join our retreat, the Reset Retreat in Chicago, the 3rd weekend in Chicago. It's a 3-day mini excursion event. Only 6 people are welcome on this excursion. I pay for hotel, transportation, food, spa, health, everything. It's going to be an amazing experience. The cost is a little high, $2,500, but I pay for everything, and it's going to be an amazing experience to dive deep into who you personally are to make sure that you're bringing out your best in 2018. So with that being said, if you want to join that unique party, then send me a text message or call me on my cell phone. It is 414-550-4012. Again, it's 414-550-4012. So with that being said, let's dive in the conversation with Kimanzi Constable. Started off as a bread salesman, and now traveling around the globe. Pretty freaking awesome, wouldn't you say? Here we go. Thanks for listening. Hey guys, welcome back to Operation Self Reset. Today we have a local native from Milwaukee, Kimanzi Constable. He is a best-selling author, a worldwide traveler. He teaches corporations, but his story didn't always start so luxurious. He actually started as a breadman in the Milwaukee area, and from there he used his entrepreneurial mindsets to springboard him into greater things. Now he's teaching individuals, traveling the world, and he is doing some amazing stuff. Kimanzi, my man, thank you for coming on the Operation Self Reset podcast.
Hey, Jake, thanks for having me here. I'm super excited, and it's also just fun to talk to somebody who is from where you're from.
Yeah, right on, man. As you know, the journey of entrepreneurship, of starting a business, of getting out there and putting yourself online is usually for people that are in those creative bubbles around the world, around the country. And the Midwest is not normally known for business people, individuals kind of stepping outside of their normal comfort zone. And so honestly, we have a mutual friend, Vidal, who was on this podcast before, kind of introduced us, and we kind of grew from there. So it's an honor to talk to you. And I think the value that you have can really instill some awesome mindset hacks into the listeners. So give us the 101. I started that, you're doing some amazing things now, but your beginnings did not always start there. Do you mind sharing your story from the beginning of your days of traveling around and filling up bread shelves in local grocery stores?
Yeah, my journey into entrepreneurship started at 19. I had worked for Sara Lee Baking here locally. And while I was doing that, I kept seeing this guy that was not wearing a uniform. And I asked him, I'm like, why aren't you wearing a uniform? And he explained to me that he was an independent contractor. And I'd never even heard of what that was before. So it kind of intrigued me. But basically, the way that it worked is he subcontracted to a large company, a company called Bimbo Bakeries. And they gave him 20%, but he was responsible for all his own stuff. So he was self-employed. And the thing that he said in that conversation was that those guys, since they were self-employed, they didn't have anybody cover their vacation routes. And if they had somebody that was good, that person would work all day long. And I said, well, I know bread. I just don't know your system, and I'm good. Would you mind training me? So he trained me, and that's what started my journey into entrepreneurship. I started a business that was vacation relief routes for independent bread owners here. It started in Wisconsin, then we started doing some work in Chicago, and then we moved to Indianapolis. And so this little business that I had started, not thinking anything about it, it grew very, very quickly because a lot of these independent guys hadn't been on vacation in like 7 years. So we would go in, we'd run their routes for a week at a time so they could go on vacation. We used their truck, we used their equipment. There was no overhead or expenses on my part. And it grew so big that like by year two, it was doing $500,000 a year. I had 6 people working for me. It was operating in 3 states, and it was a really good business because there was a lot of these guys. Yeah. Now the thing is, I was 19, 20 years old, and nobody in my family was an entrepreneur, and I didn't understand entrepreneurship. So I'm making all this money, and all this money's coming in. I'm thinking that I'm a millionaire, right? Like I had all the toys, I had owned a couple houses, like just ridiculous stuff. And
Yes.
and then the end of the year came and something hit me that I wasn't expecting. Uncle Sam was like, "Hey, I want my cut of what you did all year," right? And I'm
Totally.
like, "Your cut? Like I spent your cut. I don't, I don't have anything for you." So what ended up happening was, even though I had this business that was amazing and it made a lot of money, I completely mismanaged the finances and the taxes and all that stuff. And so by the time I got a handle on this, I was pretty severely in debt, which meant that I couldn't just step back and operate the business. I actually had to be on the bread truck because I needed that income. And so I did this business for 12 years. I limped along, did this for 12 years, and come 2011, I was $180,000 in debt.
Oh.
I had gained a lot of weight during the time because, we're delivering bread at 2, 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, right? So those hours, and then also having children, and they have activities at night. So I'm sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night, waking up at 1 and 2 a.m. to deliver this bread. I'm drinking Mountain Dew. I'm eating all this fast food, and it just led to a lot of weight gain. And it led to problems in my relationship. It led to just a lot of problems in my life. And 2011 was kind of my breaking point. I remember being on the living room of my friend's house, and I was just sitting in the living room thinking about the debt, and I was thinking about everything that was happening in my life, and I just broke down on that floor crying. Like I did not know what I was going to do to get from this situation. And after crying for like a couple hours and sitting there and thinking about everything that was going to happen. And I don't know, I had a realization in that moment that if anything was going to change, I had to be the one to do something about it. All my daydreaming and all my fantasizing and hoping for some miracle to happen, it wasn't going to happen. If there was going to be a change, I had to get my butt up and I had to do something about it. And that very next day, I decided I was going to completely change my life. I started meditating. I started exercising every day to get the weight off. I started connecting with some people that were going to be accountability partners. I started working harder in the business and being smarter with decisions. And it was about a couple year journey to really recover from that position. But at that point too, I got honest about what is it that I want to do in my life for work, and how do I want to earn an income and stuff like that. And I wanted to talk about what the everyday working person went through, like the everyday working man. So I just started journaling, and that journal ended up becoming what I self-published as a book called Tales of the Everyday Working Man and Woman, because I wanted to get this message out there. Self-publishing was just starting to become a popular podcast, and social media marketing, like all this stuff was just starting to become popular back then. So I thought that if I just put this thing on all of these mediums, that somehow people would see it and that they would buy it and that they would want it. And of course, Jake knows, the book went out there, it didn't sell anything. It sold like 5 copies in the first 6 months, and I was pretty devastated. But it helped me understand that, okay, this is possible, and I just need to figure out how to crack the code. And so I spent 2012 figuring out, how do you build an audience online, how do you build an online business, how do you do this stuff. And by the end of that year, I had a business that was doing about $5,000 a month. I had sold 45,000 copies of my 2 self-published books. I was making enough money, and all the money that came in from the book sales, I used that to pay off all my debt. So
Cool.
by the end of 2012, I was down from $180,000. I was down to about $40,000 in debt. I had a business I was making consistent income. And so at that point, I sold the bread business. I used the rest of the money that I got from the bread business to pay off the rest of the debt. And I started 2013 with a clean slate, with a business doing what I love. I was in much better shape. And from that point on, it was just building. I built a bigger online presence. I started writing for some pretty interesting publications, places like Entrepreneur and the Huffington Post and Success. My business grew. And at that point, I started thinking about what other elements do I want to add to my business. And that's kind of how I got into the consulting at company space. I started here locally in Milwaukee and booked some, $500, $1,000 consulting gigs. They weren't lighting the world on fire, but it was dipping my toes into the water and giving me that experience. And so, to make a long story short, now today, my books have sold over 100,000 copies. I write for 14 different publications, and I travel to about 35 countries a year for consulting gigs at all kinds of companies.
Yeah. Dude, you are an impressive individual, and I think you did a better intro in that last 10 seconds than I did during the intro of this conversation. But nonetheless, I mean, you have really risen to the top, and it's obvious for people to see successful people, on Amazon or when they're writing those articles. But obviously, your beginnings weren't as polished as they are now. But I think the biggest part that maybe we could dive into is the understanding of, to kind of start something, to kind of get outside of your comfort zone, is that you need to be curious. And obviously, the first springboard that you came to in your life was during that interaction with that first bread guy, to kind of open your eyes to a different way to look at the situation that you're already in. And one of the things that I talk about is, when it comes to us developing and becoming better, is that we're usually caught within our own mind. We're caught within our own kind of square space. But the way to kind of see those spotlights are to step outside of our normal zone. How did you? What instilled in you? What curiosity brought that out? Was it more of the lucrative of the money? Was it lucrative of the time? Was it lucrative of the expansion or what you could get out of it to for you to go and interact with that other bread man?
I think it was the freedom. I saw the freedom that I saw in
Sure.
him. I saw that he wasn't wearing uniform. I saw that he didn't have a set schedule. I saw that he didn't have to follow all the rules that I had to follow working for a company. And so this idea of it, he just seemed freer. He seemed happier. And I wanted that for myself. I wanted that freedom. I wanted a little flexibility. So that's what sparked me to ask him, hey, how are you so free like this? Like, how do you do what you do?
Yeah. And, obviously in those moments of dire need and emotional struggle, you raise yourself to the top. That was your own personal reset when you were sitting there on the couch, kind of crying for a couple of hours, and then you gathered yourself and said, I got to get my act together. Take us through that journey a little bit. Obviously, you talked about the health, you talked about the mental side. When it came to meditation, obviously you were still young. I mean, you're a young, male from the Midwest. Meditation wasn't maybe as popular as it is now. I mean, there's millions of apps and a lot of exposure on meditation, all the benefits, and IT scans and all that stuff. But what led you into meditation, and what did you gain from it?
For me, it was because I had a background of growing up in the church, growing up
Okay.
as a Christian. So I had done a lot of prayer in my life. So it was this idea of this quiet time of just sitting there, closing my eyes, talking to God, talking to myself, blocking out the world. And I knew how effective it was for me growing up. And I knew that I needed to reconnect with that as an adult. And I knew that with the hustle and bustle of the world and all the messages and everything that's always coming at you, you just need that time to center yourself. And so every morning, that's what I would do. I would wake up, I would sit down, I would turn everything off, and I would just take about 30 to 45 minutes to have that time of centering myself, talking to God, talking to myself, being honest about the feelings and emotions that were going on inside of me, just kind of letting those out. And by doing that, I felt like it supercharged me for my day.
Good, that's cool. Obviously, we all know the benefits now, and there's huge research, and even Ariana from Huffington, from the Huffington Post, is a big, provider of meditation or sleep in their own spaces, and so we can see the growth that has happened from there. You have traveled to 35 countries. You've talked to and met with and emailed and Skyped and social media all these different people from all different backgrounds from all over the world. When it comes to mindset or the people that connect with you and they want to grow their business, they want to grow their personal selves, they want to grow their exposure, they want to grow anything, what are the reoccurring themes that people are struggling with? And what is your, I don't know, system or tools or way for them to kind of unroll that in a way that they actually take action instead of just consuming content and not doing anything with it?
I think sadly, most people are just going to consume the content. no
True.
matter no matter what we tell them. But no, for the people that really want to move forward and that are serious about doing it, I think it's getting over a few things. I think one, it's realizing what is possible because this idea of making money online, traveling, like even when I talk about going into corporations and teaching them stuff, like people hear that and it's just like it's so far out there, right? Like I can't go into a corporate environment. I don't have these degrees and certificates. So I think one, it's realizing that it is possible for you to do it. I was a former bread vendor dude from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right? And
Yeah.
I'm back, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin is my home base. But this former bread dude that went there and just did it. I don't have the degrees. I dropped out of high school at one point and had to go back and get a GED to finish. I didn't spend a single day in college, and I've done things that should not be possible for me. So I think it's realizing that it is possible. One, two, then realizing that you probably do have a lot more knowledge than you think. I think people consume, and consume is because they think that they don't know enough or they're not an expert enough or they don't whatever. You probably have all the knowledge that you need. You have more knowledge than you think. I'm pretty confident in that. And it's just analyzing what do I really know? What do I really want? How does this fit with what I want to do? And then also this idea of what do you want for your life? I think that's probably one of the biggest things is people don't really know what kind of life that they want to live. They don't want to know what that looks like. For me, I knew that it was one word. It was freedom. I wanted freedom. I didn't know how I was going to do it or what that would look like, but I knew that I wanted freedom. For you, what's important to you? Is it spending more time with your family? If you're a single person, is it getting out there and seeing the world? But what is it that you really want for your life and sitting down there and figuring that out? And then, of course, taking those first steps. The first steps are important. The first steps are scary, but once you take those first steps, it's easier to take the second and the third. But it's taking those first steps, getting out there and doing something for yourself. But this is, why I love Jake's podcast so much and the things that he talks about is because a lot of this, it starts with your mind. It starts with your mindset and overcoming those blocks that are in your mind before you could start doing the actions.
Yeah. Two things. I want to talk about Hawaii because that place is freaking awesome. But then second of all, I want to kind of springboard off of that last comment you made. Even though you're scared, what was a time, even it can be recently or when you first started, that you were shaking in your boots, that you knew you were still moving forward, you weren't going to stop, you weren't going to let fear paralyze you and just like, and say, oh, I'm not going to meet with you today. But was there a meeting, an event? Was there a traveling experience that you were just your mind was a mess, you just didn't feel qualified, all those doubts that kind of swarm into our brain? Do you mind sharing that experience? And if so, what did you do to battle those demons?
Yeah, I think it would have been earlier this year because 2016 was a hard year in my life and business. In 2017, I started the year in Maui and getting my mind right and kind of redoing that process. And right after Maui, I went to New York to consult for a Fortune 500 company. And it was the first time that I had gone into a company that big. and with that many employees and that many implications. And I remember like the night before, thinking about this, that I'm about to go talk to 300 employees at this company that has offices in 93 countries. They do about $43 billion a year.
Whoa.
And I'm like, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna teach these people what to do. Like, and I was starting to freak it out. Like, I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not a corporate dude. I'm going in there in shorts. Like, what's going on? Like, I just started going through all those emotions. And at that moment, I guess my training kicked in, so to speak. But one thing that I'll always remember, somebody told me a long time ago when I started this journey, they said, always have fun and remember that you are the expert. You wouldn't be here doing this if they didn't want you. They want you because you're the expert. So if you're the expert, you need to act like it. So that kicked in, and I realized I'm just gonna go in there. I'm gonna have some fun. I am an expert. I do know what I'm talking about. My content is solid. And I'm going to go over it one more time just to make sure that this is going to be some good stuff. And so from that point on, instead of looking at this like, I'm not qualified, I've never been in this kind of environment, this is a really big company, they probably have heard it all, I realized that I'm going to work harder. I'm going to make this a challenge. I'm going to work harder to put out some of the best content I've ever put out. And I went in there. And did I stumble? Sure. When I first saw the audience, I saw all these dudes in suits, and I saw the environment. Sure, it was a little nerve wracking, but after a few minutes, I settled into it. I cracked a couple of jokes, I got them laughing, and I just dove deep into the content. And afterwards, the COO came up to me and was like, "That's some of the best training we've ever had in here."
Cool.
And I'm like, yes.
You knocked it out of the park. Yeah, one thing that I say in this podcast or in my events, I say bring it, and the one thing we do is we walk on fire, and the bring it is an analogy of bring on those emotions, bring it on, because I'm built to handle it. I thrive off of that, and you kind of flip the script on yourself and kind of preparing extra hard, making sure the content was even better. And I think that's where a lot of people fall apart, is that when they do get that pressure, those emotions or those doubts, is that they just feed off of that, and then the wheels fall off and they don't do anything, as opposed to making sure that you're bringing your possible best. It may not be the best when you present it, but you prepared in a way that your best self would come out. And also, too, thank you for providing a story that was relevant. I mean, that was earlier this year, right? Or was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've been doing, how long have you been going to companies and consulting and all that stuff for now?
Like 5 years.
5 years. And even Kimanzi, everybody, are you listening to this? Even Kimanzi, 5 years into his business, he still gets nervous, he still gets rattled, but he keeps on moving forward and he handles those emotions. I think that's probably the golden nugget that we can all take away from it. Let's transition now into the luxurious Caribbean, Hawaii. That is awesome. I went there for my honeymoon. It was magical place. The beautiful light tropical winds, the mountains. It's amazing. I guess, number one, when did you move out there, and why do you give so much respect to that place?
Yeah, I moved out there in February of 2014. And it was always a dream to live out. The first time I had gone there with what is now my ex-wife, the first time I had gone out there, we just stepped off the plane and we just fell in love with the energy of Hawaii. Hawaii has this like amazing energy. And then you go and you're in the indoor outdoor airport and you're like, what? Like the airport's open to the outside and the weather's perfect and the palm trees, and we just fell in love. And we said we were going to move there someday. So 2014, we sold everything here in Wisconsin and sold everything. And we just moved out there to Hawaii with like 10 suitcases. And we lived there for 2 years. Cool. And it was absolutely amazing. It was everything that we thought it was. But after about a couple years, I think the 2-year point is where are you going to make it long term or not? Because by that point, you've done all the touristy stuff, you've done all the activities, you've lived like a local, you've done it all. And at that point, you really got to be committed, because it's very far away. It takes a long time to get there, and it's so far away from the rest of the mainland United States. And you can't just drive to another state like we can just drive to Chicago if we wanted, a big city feel, right? And then too, when I started traveling for consulting, it took like so much time to get everywhere, because like even when I went to Asia, there's you can't take a flight directly from Maui to Japan or something like that. They take you to the West Coast first so that they can load the plane up with more passengers, and then you're going back
Right.
in the same direction. So once I started traveling pretty hardcore, it got to be a pretty far place to go from. But it was an amazing 2 years. It was the best as far as productivity in my life. Like I
Hmm.
was most productive there. I don't know if it was the energy and the environment or what, but it was also the best for my health. I had lost 170 pounds while I was
Wow.
there. I ran 2 marathons while I was there.
Jeez,
It
nice.
was just, it was, and swam in the ocean every day. It was pretty amazing.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that like I said, I went there as a tourist. I would imagine that there's a big difference of going there as a tourist and then moving there. There's a lot of people, in the world of entrepreneurship or in the world that just say, what, forget it. I'm burning the ships. I'm going to leave this place and I'm going to travel to a big city or a small city or to Europe or Hawaii, Japan. It doesn't really matter. What was the big struggle for you guys? It sounded like you were pretty dialed in. You're like, let's sell everything. Let's just go out there. But was there any regard to like the nervous, I guess I keep on asking about the nerves and stuff like that, the mental clarity or the mental chatter that was going on for you to take that leap, because that's a big leap just to say I'm going to sell everything I own here and then to fly out there. Or was it easy for you?
No, because we had talked about this a lot. Like we
Okay.
talked about this over and over again and gone
Okay.
back and forth, and we were on the borderline. And one day, I just clicked the buy button on the tickets, and I told my what was my wife at the time. I'm like, I bought the tickets, and she's like, you did? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, I guess we're going now. Like, no, there was a lot of, this is going to be so far away. This is such a drastic change from what we're used to.
Right.
But at one point, I just said, we just got to do it. We've been talking about doing it. And more than anything, I don't ever want to live with regrets. Like
Cool.
I knew that if we didn't do this, it was going to be a regret. So we did it. We didn't stay there long term, but it's definitely not a regret that we have.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that's. I think you nailed it. You want to do something and you're not going to have regrets. And a lot of people kind of teeter totter on that fence, and they usually fall back on safety because it's comfortable and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, this is all we got. One life. Each day, each hour, we're getting older and older, and so sometimes you got to take those big jumps. But one of the books that I found very powerful that you wrote is called "Stop Chasing Influencers." Stop Chasing Influencers. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and in that book is basically understanding that kind of what Kimanzi said earlier was about all of us have more information, more to give than what we currently believe, and sometimes we get kind of caught up in ourselves as thinking we're not good enough, the enough syndrome. And so, what great thing about this book is that you kind of pulled back the layers of how to do things and be your own influence. What were some of the things that got brought up that you were really excited to share with this audience that can relate beyond the person that is looking to start an event or to start something mainstream?
I think it's the main concept of that book. It does have very tactical stuff
It does,
that will
yeah.
teach you about online business and speaking and consulting and all this kind of stuff. But I think the main thing in that book is this idea of not waiting for permission. And I think we in life wait for permission in a lot of ways. Like we wait for some influencer to tell us that we can do this, or we wait for some sign or some miracle or the stars to align or everything to be perfect before we give ourselves permission to do the things that we want to do in life. And so this book is saying, you don't need permission from an influencer. You don't need to connect with anybody else that's going to put their magical blessing on you to do the things that you want to do in life. You have everything that you need. You have it all inside you. We have technology, we have tools, we have things that we didn't have in the past that make things just possible today. And that you need to do this. Life is too short. Don't wait for permission. Don't think that you have to connect with anybody in circumstance aligned. Just go out there and do it. Admit that this is what you want for your life. These are the goals that I have. These are the big dreams, and I'm going to do something about that. I think that's probably the bigger message in that book.
Cool. And I agree with you 110%. I mean, that's a message all of us can use more of in our life. And yeah, it's amazing content in there for sure. We'll talk at the end how to get that and pick that up. There's a book that I'm writing. It's called Emotional Warfare, and it's basically understanding that there are times when our alarm goes off, or when it's time to work out, or time to write, or time to go into work, where we just don't feel like it. And those feelings are basically related to emotion. And so for you, obviously, you're in the world of content, you're in the world of traveling, you're in the world of continuously networking and reaching out to new companies and corporations. There obviously must be days where you just don't feel like it. What do you do in those circumstances to kind of get yourself in the mindset of, I got to push past this, and I need to make this, I got to send these, polished emails, or I got to send this quick video, or whatever the case may be, for you to keep on advancing yourself to live your dream of freedom?
For me, I always have some constant sources of motivation to get me remotivated when I'm not motivated. So, like one book that I read when I first started this journey is called 48 Days to the Work You Love by a man named Dan Miller.
Yeah.
And the book is not about quitting your job and doing whatever in 48 days. That's not the message of the book. The message of the book is really understanding this idea of what's possible in your life, and that in 48 days you can get in the right mindset to go ahead and make those things a reality for you. So I probably read that book, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a year.
Wow,
because it's that powerful to me. So I'll go back to that book. I always have different motivational videos that I like to watch on YouTube from people that are inspirations to me. I'll throw on some Gary Vaynerchuk. A lot of people know Gary. I'll throw on some Gary Vaynerchuk, and then a couple other authors that I really like and respect, and I'll go and I'll watch some videos and what they have to say on motivation and getting back in the zone and stuff like that. That inspires me. I love music, so I'll just sit there for a minute and I'll throw on some music and I'll get re-inspired to music. Or I'm not opposed to going to the gym and maybe getting a run in, or going outside and getting a run in, because that also helps me too. But I always have sources of motivation for when I'm not motivated, and I get remotivated that way. I might reach out to somebody in my network, somebody that I'm connected to that knows me and that can keep me on my toes. And I'll say, hey, this is what's going on. And he'll say, talk to me, and I'll talk to them. And then at the end of the day, I just realize that this is going to get done. I got to do the work no matter how I feel. And after I've gone through all of the emotional stuff, I'll just get to work.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for that book reference. I know probably a lot of listeners are going to be starting to pick that up. But most importantly, I mean, I think the key thing is that you have things kind of set up. You know that these emotions are going to come. You need to do certain things for you to get in that zone of productivity, or in the zone of work. And you know that you're going to continuously keep on pushing past. And I think that's the key of setting those kind of reminders up in advance. The one thing that I'm always impressed with is the amount of content you're able to push out there, not only just on your own website, but Huffington Post, Entrepreneur, and even your articles in Success. What happens when you have that classic writer's block? Now, obviously, this doesn't apply to everybody, but I think it applies to majority of us that are writing emails, that are trying to find the right wording, the right tone in our letters, our thank you notes, or whatever. What do you do with writer's block? Do you just type away and you delete? How do you go about that?
I don't know if I've ever experienced writer's block in that way.
Okay.
And I think it's because of setting up systems. So for me, I don't ever just sit down and say, this is what I'm going to write. I always have systems in place. Like I have a content calendar for content on my site, on social media, and the places that I write for. If I'm going to write emails or I'm going to write messages, those are planned in advance. Like I know who they're going to, where they're going to. So I think it's having a system in place helps with that writer's block, because I think a writer's block comes when somebody sits down and they have an idea of what they're going to do, but it's not really systematized. And you're not going to systematize everything that you do, obviously. But if I did experience like writer's block in that way, where I do sit down to write something, or maybe even if I did know what it was going to be from the content calendar, and I sat down and I wrote, I think for me, it would be music is definitely an inspiration for me. And I think I would do exactly like you said. I'd write anyways. I would just put some words down. They might not be the best words, but at least I'm putting some words down. Or I might go back and I might see what other people have said on a topic, or said something similar, and just see what they say and see if there's any inspiration that will strike me there. seeing what others have done and what others have said. But I would keep going anyways, and I would keep writing.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that. I experienced it, and I know a lot of other people do too. And the problem is, how do we get gain that content? But I thanks for that insight. Just couple more questions. One thing in particular is that obviously the show is called Operation Self Reset. What does a self reset mean to you?
I think that, and I discovered this more this year than I think any other year. It's this idea of constantly checking in with yourself, constantly checking in with where you are. Maybe the reset might be more of a major reset. Like I have been on this journey for 5 years, but this year I needed a reset. So I went to Maui and I had 3 weeks there to get clear about my goals and my dreams and where I was going and the things that I want to accomplish this year. So it might be a set time every year where you sit and you just pause and you get honest about where you are, where you want to go, and do those goals over again. But besides the one time a year that I did this in Maui, I also do this every month where I just have a me time, so to speak, where I'll go and I'll get, this is going to sound kind of funny, Jack. I'll get a manicure, a pedicure, a massage. I'll
Yes.
have a day at the spa.
Look at
And
you.
yeah, oh yeah, once a month, manicure, pedicure, massage, day at the spa. And then I'll have a day where it's business free, where I
Cool.
don't have 50 tasks to do. And at that point, I'll just get clear about where am I at this month? What do I want to accomplish next month? And just, it's that time of constantly checking in with yourself, constantly being honest with yourself, and then also just refreshing those goals and what you need to accomplish.
Sure. Right on. Look at you. Even you taking care of yourself, man. I
Oh
like
yeah.
that. I appreciate that. What's the, as you know, I mean, you just talked about it, every month you kind of re-go, figure out what you want to do and accomplish. What's the next steps for you? Is it, what is the big journey? You got any more books on the burner? You got any big consulting gigs that you want to crush? What's going on in your life in the next couple of months here or a year?
Yeah, I just turned a new book into my publisher that's
Oh,
called Seven Choices You Regret at the End of Your Life. So that one is with the publisher, and they're going to edit it and polish it, and so it'll probably be 8 months before that book comes out. I'm also writing a book right now um, called it's about my journey from last year to this year, and after accomplishing so many things, and then have an entire year that was a funk. Um, and so I chronicled everything that had happened and everything that's happening this year, and it's going to talk about, it's going to get brutally honest about some things, Jake, and
okay.
just talk about funks and how do you overcome those,
Sure.
and yeah. So that book I'm going to turn that probably into the publisher next year. For me, the next phase is, I guess, what you would call like settling, because I've traveled so much.
Sure.
I've gone to like 61 countries over the last 5 years
Jeez.
for consulting gigs. I've gone to 24 so far this year. I mean, next in 10 days, I'll be in Africa. I'll be
Wow.
in Africa for 6 weeks doing 6 consulting gigs there.
Oh my
But
God.
after all this travel and kind of being a nomad, Jake knows this, I just got an apartment for myself here in Wisconsin, and I got a home base now. And the goal is to transition this from a one man operation primarily. I mean, I do have a team of 6 virtual assistants, but to transition this from primarily a one man traveling, doing all these consulting gigs, to more of a digital marketing agency where we're going to take on bigger projects. We might do some more hands on projects, and then also we're going to send out some consultants for us and just take a commission. So kind of like a booking agency. So the next goal is to me not travel anywhere near what I have been doing, to maybe just do 10 countries a year, and then the rest of the opportunity and the gigs to refer those out to other consultants, and then to take on some bigger projects for companies that my team can do. But it's to build an agency, and I totally see, I know a lot of people are opposed to this, but I totally see having some fancy new age office somewhere downtown,
Yeah.
overlooking the lake, and we have like the PlayStation room, and we got we got the yoga room, and like all this new age funky stuff, right? But I totally see having an office and a corner desk and all that stuff, and having this agency that just does bigger work for companies. But so then the next phase for me is more settling down, growing this thing to be bigger than myself, less travel, and giving more opportunities to other people.
Cool. The great part there is obviously your dream, your vision is monstrous and awesome, but it just shows the power of having the next step. And you're right. I mean, you saw what worked, you understand what companies need, but you're going to the direction of building something bigger and better. And a lot of us kind of are scared of that vision of setting these massive dreams or goals for ourselves. But you can hear in your voice, you're excited, because you have you have the vision in your head. You know the color scheme. You know where it's going to be placed. You know where it's going to look at. All those different types of things. And that's what a true a goal that you can accomplish is when you're excited to talk about. And thanks for sharing that emotion in that setting, because a lot of us set goals, but we're not excited for. And to hear that of the vision that you have for yourself is very empowering for myself and hopefully the listeners too. Kimanzi, my man, dude, I tip my hat to you. You're an inspiration. You're a guy that came from humble beginnings, and you're continuously growing. And the one thing that I always watch for you is you're always working. You're always grinding away, as they say. But you're truly putting value out there for individuals to be inspired. And from me and from the countless other people that are looking at your work from afar, we thank you and appreciate you. And if you guys are listening right now, you guys got to check him out on Facebook and find out all the great things he's doing. So how can people connect with you and find out all the great things?
Yeah, you can head to K Constable, that's Constable, kconstable.com. You can get a bunch of good free content that talks about mindset, it talks about personal development, and if you're into like the consulting and lifestyle business, it talks about that kind of stuff. There's a lot of free good content there, and there's also some social media links there where you can connect with me on social media and see some of these crazy journeys through pictures. But definitely head to kconstable.com and check out and see if anything looks like it'd work for you.
Cool. All that will be in the show notes. Kimanzi, my man, I appreciate you. Thanks for all the wisdom. And let us know when your next book launches. I'd love to have you back on for a part 2.
Absolutely. I'm coming.
All right. See you, man.
Thanks again to Kimanzi for coming on the Operation Self Reset podcast. Awesome content, awesome guy, truly inspiration for anybody that is looking to get started. I think the biggest thing that is always impactful when you see his beginnings, he didn't really plan on being where he is today, but as you can see, continuous growth allowed him to get to where he is today. So again, Kimanzi, thank you for coming on the show, and safe travels wherever you're at. And most importantly, if you guys want to get in contact with Operation Self Reset, see what's going on, feel free to go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/OSR fan page. And I've been posting more videos on YouTube lately. Head on over to YouTube and just type in Jake Naraki or Operation Self Reset. With that being said, I appreciate you guys. Until the next time that we talk, which will be next week, Wednesday, stay freaking awesome, be freaking awesome, share freaking awesomeness with somebody that you know. And until then, we'll see ya.